So we had to have a completely disconnected two-parter where we got rid of her. I'm convinced now that it was actually an accident on behalf of the writers that Georgiou ended up in the future. It's literally an accident. They wrote it this way, forgot she was still on the ship, and said, screw it, let's shoot it. I guess that's how Georgiou ended up in the future. They should really rename this show to the show where Saru gets more and more dumb the more time goes on. What do you guys think? Someone call up Alex Kirkland. This is the episode where I finally noticed the reason for the spore drive. It's not to explain strange new worlds. The purpose of the spore drive is to more efficiently tell a serialized story. In this episode, we have a complete leap in tone, in plot, during the end of Georgiou's memorial service. We're saying one thing, and then boop, we figure out where we need to go with the spore drive, and then we just go. Is that why we have the spore drive? So when we're telling a serialized story, we can go to where we need to service the plot. In a sense, the plot comes before the ship. Okay? Previously, a story had to start where the ship already was, because there was no time to get there, and therefore you could not easily have a serialized story. Right? So, perhaps we're using the spore drive in this to solve some of the issues we had with serialized stories. To a large degree with DS9, and to a smaller degree with Voyager. Is that the purpose of the spore drive? When they first drafted this show, did they design it in such a way that the spore drive had to be there? Was the spore drive the first thing they designed because they knew the show would be serialized? I don't know. It's a little bit to chew on. But if it's just a crutch, like I'm suspecting it is, and this episode made evident, that's kind of sad. So, without further ado, let's just spore drive right into it. This episode was called Sukal, and it is the 11th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery, and I finished it a few hours ago, and I let it simmer. And I'll say it right now. Overall, I liked the episode, and that's with Discovery in mind, okay? If this was an episode of TNG, I'd be giving it a 1. But with Discovery in mind, and with the Discovery mindset, it's not that bad. And I'm going to explain why. This episode has a cool opening shot. Shots like these are sorely lacking from Discovery. We see a forward zoom in to the Discovery. A little bit of ship porn, if you will. And we're picking up right where we left off last episode with the memorial for Georgiou. I don't know why. If we're establishing this as purely a serialized show, and then we have one episode start exactly where the last one left off, it makes it feel like a two-parter, even though it wasn't. It's a little bit of a nitpick, and it doesn't matter, but at the memorial, there's a conversation between Adira and Stamets, and I guess they're like a family now. He calls them a package deal. I'm kind of not sure why. I kind of would like it if Adira would be interacting with the rest of the crew a little bit more. It kind of seems like she's confined to engineering with Paul and Stamets. Like, I want to see her on the bridge some more. I mean, they play off each other well, Stamets and Adira, but Gray, Adira's past boyfriend who has died, appears, and they get into like an argument, and I'm not quite sure what it was about. Maybe there's something I can't read visually and their body language is going on because I'm stupid. But I guess Gray just needed some time alone, and that's why they weren't talking. I don't know. I mean, there's probably going to be more to it. The next episode, they're probably going to explain Gray was, I was doing this somehow, even though I've never known the spirits of previous hosts to go on missions on their own into the subspace of reality, as Gray seems to be doing, but that's beside the point. This is interrupted by someone receiving a whoop from their strange future badge, an information update from the computer showing that, holy crap, there's a life sign in that Kelpian ship at the center of the burn. What? What? Why weren't we going there already? It was already a distress call. We didn't need to know any more. Why didn't we immediately go there 3 episodes ago? Oh yeah, it's because we had to get rid of Georgiou, because the writers accidentally brought her to the future and therefore made it impossible for her to be in her own show, in her own time. Whoops. So we had to have a completely disconnected 2-parter where we got rid of her. I'm convinced now that it was actually an accident on behalf of the writers that Georgiou ended up in the future. It's literally an accident. They wrote it this way, forgot she was still on the ship, and said, screw it, let's shoot it. I guess that's how Georgiou ended up in the future, because they had to do a detour to get rid of her. Anyway, we wasted 2 episodes getting rid of Georgiou, and now we're back on track. We're back onto the plot. This is what everyone wanted to know, what's going on with the burn. It's the only interesting thing in this series. And they had previously thought that the holographic image they got of the Kelpian that was inside the burn was suffering from radiation burns, and that's why her face was red. And then Sarah decides to right now reveal that it's because she's pregnant. Why didn't he immediately say this earlier? You know, is Sarah emotionally compromised right now? Like, what is his problem? Why is he getting stupider every episode? He started off great this season. He was fantastic at the beginning, and he's becoming more and more childish as time goes on. It's really, really disappointing. As one of the stronger characters in the show, to be downgraded like this. It's pathetic. But we got to make Michael look cool somehow. So Michael is the cool, calm, collected one this time. And Michael, the mutineer in chief, is now has the gall to look at Saru and think he's compromised. Michael thinks that Saru is compromised now, as does the viewer, but Michael has no leg to stand on with regards to being compromised, following orders, you know? She's never seen one order that she wanted to follow. Every order she gets, she subverts the order, breaks the rules, and gets away with it. And or endangers the life of everybody, and she keeps getting away with it. And Saru slips up once, and oh my god, he's compromised. So they spore jump to the outside of the nebula, and this was so cool. This part was awesome. Saru said, "Shields up, red alert," and then they went into the cool, dangerous-looking nebula. Oh, I love that. That was just one of my favorite things from Star Trek, is seeing a ship go into a spooky nebula and watching everybody brace themselves, and everyone's saying, like, talking about the shields and what's going on. I love it. That I got chills seeing it. That was something that immediately added a whole point to this episode. They go in, and of course this nebula is very dangerous. They don't know what's going on. The radiation is impacting their shields. This is one hell of a nebula. The nebula itself is crushing their shields, and it can't hold. And they get this idea to send Book in with Book's ship, who is the get out of jail free card for this season. They have Book's ship inside the shuttle base still of Discovery, and he flies out, goes into the nebula, and he finds out details on where the ship is and coordinates and all there, and he's suffering from radiation poisoning, but he sets his ship to autopilot to return, and he returns just fine, and he gets fixed up by Dr. Culber and whatnot, and whoever the chief medical officer is, I can't remember, but he's okay now, and they figured out what's going on inside the nebula and where the ship is, so they beam Michael, Culber and Saru into the ship, okay? And leaving Ensign Tilly in charge, Vance has a holographic conversation with them, and he's like, "You're leaving Tilly in charge? Is that a good idea?" And being the voice of the audience, right? No, it's not a good idea. It is not a good idea to have an ensign be first officer and be in charge of a ship. Come on. Like, you don't, it's not necessarily the knowledge. You don't necessarily have the disposition that you get from serving. The amount of time you need to serve to get the correct mental disposition to be willing to kill your own friends to save the ship. That's what you gotta be willing to do. I'm not confident Tilly will do it. Being an ensign, you just don't have the life experience. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. And I've been on this ship for like 5 years now. I couldn't even come close to doing it. That's why I wear red. So we have Vance telling Saru that the Emerald Chain is conducting military operations on Kaminar, as if Saru didn't need any more emotional stress. Now he's forced to choose between, do we save this one Kelpian and burn, or do we try to save lots of Kelpians on Kaminar? They make the right choice and stick with their mission. And beaming to the ship at the center of the burn reveals that they're actually beaming into an expansive holodeck. This is like a holo ship designed for the pleasure of the single occupant, which is the last remaining Kelpian. This was a Kelpian vessel sent to investigate a dilithium nursery. We find that this planet, being the source of the burn, is mostly dilithium. And everyone having died on this ship, the ship has turned what I suppose is the entirety of the interior of the ship into a holographic playground for our last Kelpian named Sukal. And this was designed by his mother, and the holo programs that are running are heavily degraded Starfleet officers and other such aliens that are used to give a rudimentary education to Sukal after his actual biological mother has died. Yes, quite sad. Interesting. We've seen it before in Star Trek, but what do you do? At least we're doing something cool, I guess. So they beam in, and their visages are altered to be more in line with what Sukal should be able to interpret, that being a human on behalf of Saru, a Bajoran on behalf of Culber, and a Trill on behalf of Michael. So we get to see the actor, I believe Doug Jones, in his human costume for this episode. He is playing human Saru, or a thin veneer of human placed visually over Saru. It's an interesting thing to see. It's interesting always to compare an actor acting without makeup and prosthetics to their acting with it, and you can see how it links up, and you really see their craft, like with Marco Lamo in Deep Space Nine. That time where he dressed up as a Bajoran, and you could see more of his face. Very cool. They find the single Kelpian. He's shell-shocked from being alone his whole life, and they spook the hell out of him. So they try to call this a first contact mission. Just to be easy on little poor Suckle. Little Suckle. Be easy on the Suckle. Little Suckle. Little Suckle's lost. Poor little Suckle. Suckle, he's afraid of some monster, which they know to be a holographic projection because he's the only life sign. So on and so on. They find a hologram of an ancient Kelpian, and this is the oldest Kelpian Saru has ever seen because of Harai and the premature culling of their species. Saru is amazed by this, and he looks at the storybook that this old Kelpian has. and it describes a monster that is like, he looks like he's a dark, big creature covered in kelp. And this represents the fear of Kelpians and how they have to destroy him to overcome the barriers that they're placing on themselves. This is a representation of their mental anguish, this creature, described in this book, but made manifest either by Isa or by Sukal as physical reality, as physical as a hologram can be, inside this holoship. Okay? This monster is very cool looking. It was compelling to look at. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And it was scaring Michael and scaring Sukal. And they chase down Sukal, and they find him in this dilapidated, what looks like an old shopping mall to me. I don't know. It looks like a dilapidated shopping mall set. I don't know. It looked kind of cheap. And he's being menaced by this creature. And they basically, they calm his fears by having Saru sing that lullaby to him that was sang to him by the elder hologram Kelpian. And this makes Sukal scream. Like he screams with anger, deletes the monster, and that scream sends a shockwave out from the inside of the Dilithium planet all the way through the Veruba Nebula, and the shockwave impacts the Discovery. This is what caused the burn. We figured it out. Sukal causes the burn by screaming. I don't know why exactly, and it seems kind of dumb, but it's something. I mean, I didn't expect it. You know, that there was a Kelpian child wailing in fear causing the burn. I didn't predict that. I had something that was way stupider in mind. But that's our A plot. And our B plot is the fact that with Tilly in charge, we somehow let an enemy ship get within close quarters combat range of the Discovery. We just let it happen because we're in the ship and wait a minute, there's a Federation ship coming in. Look at this. Boop, boop, boop. And the neutrino emissions around the ship are off the charts. And my immediate instinct, immediately, as soon as I heard there was a Federation ship coming, it's not a Federation ship. It's not. It can't be. This close to the burn, this far away from Starfleet. There's no way that's a Federation ship. Get the hell out of here. And they don't. They specifically say it's 10 minutes out, and then we get another update when it's 2 minutes out. So we're just waiting there when we could have jumped away. But oh well, we waited till it was too late to get away, and what happens? It's the Viridian. At least I think so. Osira's ship with Osira on board. Osira has a visual exchange with Tilly saying, "You suck. No, you suck. No, you're out of line. No, you're out of line. I want the Discovery. Give me the Discovery." And they managed to distract Tilly long enough to have Osira beam soldiers into the engineering deck, or at least the spore drive room of Discovery, taking a rest of Stamets, putting a mind control crown on his head, and forcing him to spore jump where they want him to. So Osira has effectively stolen Discovery with all hands on board. Oh my god, right? Book's ship tries to go back into the nebula to rescue Culber, Saru, and Michael. What he doesn't know is that Adira is a stowaway. Wah wah. Cool security, bro. Adira has beamed herself onto the Kelpian ship in the nebula, complete with medication for radiation, which is good. And Michael has beamed back onto Book's ship. So now Michael and Book are on Book's ship, leaving the nebula, only to find Discovery gone, and Saru and Culber and Adira are in the nebula on the Kelpian ship, in the holoship. So we know what caused the burn. Discovery has been kidnapped by the Emerald Chain, and Book and Michael are alone outside the nebula. What could happen? Who knows? Stay tuned till next episode of Star Trek Discovery. Same disco channel, same disco time. So that's your brief synopsis of this episode. let's describe some of my feelings that I had, shall we? We find out in this episode that there's this strange little spur on the bottom left-hand armrest of Federation ships. The Shenzhou had it, and for some reason also the Discovery has it. I guess we're just using mass-produced chair models. And it's this little nub that that if you're feeling bad, you rub it. And it's so demeaning and nasty and just childish. Like, Tilly confides in Michael, of course, and Michael tells her that Giorgio on the Shenzhou used to rub that nub so much that it became a dip, like a little concave dimple, and it was shiny. She rubbed it so many times, she took the paint off it, and also destroyed the nub, right? And she told Tilly that if she's ever in trouble, just feel that, and you'll be doing better. And how does this design flaw go across a Walker class, all the way to a Crossfield class? Are they using the same exact chair? Is it a defect just in the manufacturing or in the design? I don't know. It seems kind of silly to me, but there it is. Osiris' ship engulfs the Discovery using physical restraints that look like large tentacles that come out of her ship and wrap around the Discovery. Meaning that we've had tentacles, like physical tentacles in space in Picard, in the final scenes of Picard, in the final scenes of Lower Decks, and near the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. So we're using the same visual trope 3 times now. The strange robot from the future had tentacles in Picard. The Pac-Leds used physical grappling hooks to attach onto Cerritos in Lower Decks, and what I suppose is the Viridian has tentacles come out of it to engulf the Discovery in Season 3 of Discovery. Just something I noticed. Is it important? No. Does it matter? No. But there you go. Although it feels like a decent episode of a sci-fi serialized action show, it only really works on those merits. It poses no meaningful philosophical question, but it does present an interesting sci-fi scenario with the Kelpian hollow ship. To be clear, we've seen this concept before in Star Trek, but I don't mind seeing it return. Inexplicable command decisions on behalf of Tilly should have been expected, coming from an ensign. Hopefully this acts as a learning experience. It probably won't. At least this episode wasn't boring or offensive. I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10. That's right, it is on par with my previous favorite episode of this season. That episode being Die Trying. If I had seen at least one more active Starfleet ship in this episode, I would have gave it a 7. Because there's nothing horribly offensively wrong with this episode. It's not extremely congratulatory to Michael Burnham. And I was a little bit interested in what was happening in the next scene. Like, I kind of wanted to pay attention. I kind of wanted to finish the episode. I've seen many episodes of this show and of other recent Star Trek shows where I legitimately did not want to keep watching. I would keep checking to see how much time was left in the video, right? Because I didn't want to sit through the whole thing, but I sat through this whole thing and it went by fast. What can I say? The last 3 episodes of this show haven't been disgustingly horrible. They haven't been great, but they haven't been to the depths of shittiness of Discovery Season 2 or Picard Season 1. We haven't gotten down to that level yet. We haven't seen a previously loved character, getting his eye torn out and then snipped off and then tortured to death. And seeing people just execute people outright with 2 guns. Like, we haven't stooped down to that level yet. But some of the Picard shittiness has seeped into this episode. Like with the Kuwat Malat and shenanigans with Romulus and shenanigans with space tentacles and what have you. Is it fair to compare this to Picard? Not really. Am I going to do it? Yes. Am I Lieutenant Mark? Yes. And I'll see you next time. Signing out.